let the good times roll. Let the good times roll. Don't care if you're young or old. Get together and let the good times roll.
That's Louis Jordan,
Yes,
the great Louis Jordan with Let the Good Times Roll.
yes, that was his first person to perform it actually
Yeah.
and record it. It was written by his wife, was one of the co-writers of it.
Wow. And
And
that's become like a staple of jam bands.
yes,
So, or anybody that wants to jam.
and especially all the rock and rollers, just wherever they go, and the blues musicians.
Yeah.
Actually, B.B. King actually made it famous, you know. So many people associate it with B.B. King, but it was
Louis Jordan.
Yes.
And that brings us to the name of this program.
Music, the Unifying Force. I'm Yusuf Gandhi.
I'm Janice Siegel. This is episode 9.
Yes.
We're going to talk about what happened before rock and roll, pre-rock and roll, everything that led up to that, all the different styles that came together in one big bang.
Yes.
Jump blues, which Louis Jordan is known for.
And right to when we go to T-Bone Walker at the end, he's known for that.
Yeah, exactly. New Orleans influence, the electric guitar starts to come to the front line along with saxophone-driven bands and
Yes,
stuff like that.
saxophone and keyboard driven, and almost so many instruments come into the whole rock and roll over the years.
I mean, this is a little bit before my time.
Yes.
But it just didn't happen out of the blue. Rock and roll didn't happen out of the blue. There were a whole bunch of things that came before it. Of course, country music, gospel, spirituals, which featured the call and response. And you have early jazz and swing.
And when it really came to rock and roll with Bill Haley and all of them, and then it became the devil's own music, just like your T-shirt.
Well,
there.
if you notice, everybody, I'm wearing a T-shirt that's called Devil Fishing. It's actually a painting, a representative of a painting of the devil fishing for souls. So he's for bait. He's throwing out his lines, and on his line, he's got gambling. He's got women. He's got wine, whiskey, beer, and needles and drugs and money, and of course, rock and roll, which should be added to that.
And who would be the godmother of rock and roll than a gospel artist?
Well, the beginning of it all would be Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Yes.
She was extraordinary. Good. First of all, her guitar playing was aggressive. She played, I was talking about this with a female musician the other day. Like, why do people say she, as a compliment, they say a woman plays like a man, right?
Yeah.
Why can't she just play like a woman? But being said, it was very unusual at the time because she played with distortion and she played very rhythmically and aggressively.
And she bent notes. She did everything which nobody had heard of.
That's right. And this really influenced rock and roll guitarists later on. She added bluesy riffs, and she just had this incredible rhythmic drive from her gospel.
Yes. And so let's listen to a bit of Didn't It Rain by Sister Rosetta Tharpe.
Didn't it rain, children? Rain, oh yes. Didn't it? Yes, didn't it? You know it did, didn't it? Oh yes, how it rained. I said it rained, children. Rain, oh yes. Didn't it? Yes, didn't it? You know it did, didn't it?
Wow. And you see her. She looks like somebody's grandma. And she's got this electric guitar strapped to her. Oh man, she's the most. She really is. She really was one of the first to blend gospel with rhythm and blues in a way. I mean, lots of people followed with that idea. But Willie Mae Thornton, Big Mama Thornton. I mean, I have to say, I have personal experience with her. When I was, I must have been 17 or something. My group, Laurel Canyon, opened for her for a week at
Yeah.
the Gaslight Cafe over on McDougal Street. Because at that time, McDougal Street they were featuring what we now call Americana acts, but it was really blues artists that were still alive,
Yes.
like Sonny Terry and Brian McGee. And, and Big Mama she wasn't very big at that point. I think she had lost a lot of weight because of her health reasons.
Yeah.
But I remember she played the drums as well. And she had a young band of white boys, skinny white boys that played the blues that she brought with her. But it was insane to listen to her every night and sing Hound Dog every night. And we had a male bass player at that point, and she could never remember our name, Laurel Canyon. So she'd introduce us as 3 Queens and a King. But she was incredible, and she rarely received credit, I think, for
Hound Dog.
Hound Dog.
Yes, everyone thought it was an Elvis song. Well, it became an Elvis song like many others in
Yeah.
a way.
Yes.
But it was written by Lieber and Stoller for her. And actually after that, Elvis did so many songs. They wrote so many songs for Elvis, actually, because Elvis made it a hit for them. And they wrote a lot of songs for Elvis. I think Jailhouse Rock, all that was written by Lieber and Stoller. It was Big Mama Thornton. And let's listen to her.
Oh, let's listen to her sing Hound Dog.
You ain't nothing but a hound. When Snoopy around the door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. When Snoopy around the door. You been wagging your tail, but I ain't gonna be
Oh, I want to hear more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she owns that song as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The way she sings it, it's.
Yeah.
And Elvis would have had to really work to really make it song his own, I'm sure. But knowing how he was always very humble. So
He totally gave credit
to the right people.
to the right people.
He was
And
actually stopped by Tom
Tom Parker, right?
from talking too much about that because he wanted him to be the focus. But Elvis always was very, complimentary of all the African American musicians who influenced him.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this song Hound Dog had the guitar is the most important element in it, also. So it's the perfect beginning of rock and roll, really. All of these things coming together, including jump blues,
Yes.
right? This is like, I think that this particular subgenre of jazz and swing happened when the big bands started breaking up into smaller units, and it made it less expensive actually for club owners to hire these musicians. But a lot of Louis Prima, I mean, did that, and of course the great Louis Jordan, who did a lot of collaborations with other artists like Ella and Louis Armstrong and Bing Crosby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And in fact, Louis Jordan, so many artists have, said that he was a big influence on them.
Yeah.
Right up to T-Bone Walker and down. They all said that he was their influence.
Well, he was a real performer too. I mean, I've seen clips of him, and he seemed like he had a great sense of humor. We're going to hear a song that sort of exemplifies his sense of humor. The New York Voices, by the way, did a great version of this too. That we taught our NYU ensemble, but it's a tribute to poultry.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone who likes chickens, this is a famous tune that Louis Jordan is famous for. He was also a great saxophone player.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
In fact, most of these songs which I was listening to, he starts with his wax solo and then goes into it.
Yeah. But we're going to hear There Ain't Nobody Here But Us Chickens.
One night Farmer Brown was taking the air. He locked up the barnyard with the greatest of care. Down in the hen house something stirred when he shouted, "Who's there?" This is what he heard. There ain't nobody here but us.
That's so good. So good.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But that's the time when lyrics were all fun. People enjoyed that. Was the greatest part.
No.
The lyrics, they were so much.
Well, this is when a lot of people used to ask Manhattan Transfer,
Yes.
like, about our early material and how we found what we found attractive about the songs of the 30s and 40s, 50s. It was this
Yes.
wittiness and the humor and the real sentimentality and romance of these songs. But in particular, we loved the humor. I mean, we would do tunes like Triskaidekaphobia, Fear of the Number 13, you know, and Java Jive is also humorous, and, you know, Pork Chops and Gravy. And
What I noticed when you were doing it with Manhattan Transfer is the John Hendricks lyrics were like that too.
yes,
When he
Full
wrote
of
lyrics
wit.
for your vocalese short
Yeah.
songs, it was full of wit. Yeah.
full of wit and colloquialisms too, slang, jazz slang, and so probably words that John just made up too. I had to ask him a couple of times about what does this mean exactly? But I think he just made up stuff sometimes. Winoni Harris, right, was also, although I'm not sure, I think we're going to somebody else right now.
Yes.
But Winoni Harris was also a blues shouter.
Yeah.
You know, who I love. His signature hit was "Good Rockin' Tonight," I think, but he was known also for raunchy lyrics were also a part of this time.
Yeah.
But we are going to hear from Chuck Berry. Is that right?
Roll over Beethoven.
All right.
Well, I'm a writer, I'm a mail it to my local DJ. Yeah, it's a jumping little record. I want my jockey to play. Roll over Beethoven. Tell
Oh.
It just, you want it to go on and on. I mean, it seems to me, you know, that seemed like to have a basis in boogie woogie
Yes.
too.
And again, his guitar playing, it reminds you of Sister Rosetta Tharpe. And he
Exactly.
talks about it. He always credited her with a big influence on him.
And Chuck Berry, of course, was a
Yes.
big
Influence on the whole rock and roll scene that followed, basically. Especially the British rock and rollers with basically Chuck Berry. And like I know Keith Richards was his biggest fan, and Keith Richards was there on all his birthday celebrations. He would go and perform, and he even insisted that his pianist be put into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he felt that he was unique in the way he played rock and roll, and he should have been there. And he fought to make the guy
wow.
be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Didn't the Beatles record Royal Over Beethoven?
Yeah. Because John Lennon was a big fan of Chuck Berry. So was Paul, you know. So they recorded quite a few of Chuck Berry songs in their first album, especially. Yeah,
I hope he got his publishing.
I'm sure he did.
Okay.
Yes, that would, I'm sure.
I just hope so.
But they were not actually the rock and rollers, from what I knew in those days, especially people like Chuck Berry and Little Richard and all, didn't get that much. Their percentage of royalties were much lower because the producer or the record company kept a larger share in those days, especially with the African American musicians, from what I read. You know.
I'm sure that is correct.
Mhm.
I'm sure that is correct.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, because this was the beginnings of rock and roll here, and there was a lot of money to be made.
So we go from Chuck Berry
to Fats Domino.
Yes.
So Fats Domino's bringing in the New Orleans feel. The mixture of New Orleans, classic New Orleans R&B, and French Creole, I think he was, Fats Domino.
Yes.
I'm sure his
There were a lot of them. They're basically the African Americans in there were French Creole, actually.
yeah.
Yeah.
But he was huge. I
Mhm.
mean, again, this is before my time. But he had like this really relaxed. Again, I think Boogie Woogie.
Yes.
Boogie Woogie sort of provided the structure for the beginning of these early rock and roll songs.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, the musical structure I'm talking about now.
Mhm.
8 to the bar. Beat me, daddy, 8 to the bar. Just and a fabulous warm voice. What are we hearing from Fat?
We're hearing his favorite Blueberry Hill,
Uh,
and in fact, in this song, though it's not here what you're listening to, but when we put, as you know, we put all the songs on our list later, which is the full um, link is there so that they can listen to the whole song on YouTube if they have to. And in this, he talks about his music. This is a live recording, and he talks about his music, about rock and roll being involved in this. And then he dedicates it to Elvis Presley song.
Wow, he dedicates Blueberry Hill.
This when he's
Oh,
performing it
yeah.
here.
So check out the playlist
Yes.
because you got to hear more. I mean, the whole version of these songs. They're really incredible. Let's hear Fats.
I found my thrill on Blueberry Hill. On Blueberry Hill. When I found you.
Oh, more. I mean, what a feel. What a
Yes.
feel that
And,
is.
and the way he sings it, it's just, and all his songs actually, when you hear him sing,
Yeah.
you can actually, it's almost so unique. You hear the first few notes from his voice, and you know that's Fats Domino.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unique.
He had one of those, I mean, immediately identifiable voices. Relaxed, so relaxed and warm. And then you've got the 12/8 in the right hand of the piano, ding, 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 which became the signature of rock and roll.
Yes.
And this is something that kids could play, teenagers could play on their pianos or
Right.
guitars, you know. But what a feel. What a feel that is. And that brings us to, well, there's Little Richard.
Yes.
And what can we say about Little Richard that hasn't already been said? He was a bit of an enigma.
He was, in fact, but like you have to, people, I would ask them to see his biopic, and it is really a very interesting biopic. And I think it's
Where
on
can people?
YouTube.
Where
You
can
see
people?
it
I was
on
going to say, where?
It's
What's the? Do you know the name of it?
No,
Because I would
forgot the
love
name, but
to
it's
see
a
that.
great biopic, and you see every aspect of it, how he started, and they show the whole thing about him, and we get to know about the song we're going to play, "Long Tall Sally," and why he recorded it. You know, when he was, he had recorded all these songs like Lucy, Lottie, Miss Claudie, Tutti Frutti, and he was, he heard on another radio station, he heard Pat Boone singing these songs. And he got a bit upset that why these are my songs. Why is my song not being played on this radio station? And his manager tried to explain to him that this is a white radio station. They don't play black music. And that, the record company is putting it on so that he gets more exposure and, about the royalties and things like that. But he comes to realize that he's not getting that kind of royalties. And for him, it was important that people know that it is his song. He says, this is crazy. My songs, people will think these are Pat Boone songs. And so what he decides to do is he decides to do a song which is much faster and in a way that he doesn't think Pat Boone will be able, or another singer like that will be able to sing his song. So he records Long Tall Sally, and it was fast, and it was, it was not easy to sing. And so that's when, he recorded this song, Long Tall Sally. Let's play it first.
Song Uncle John with bald head Sally. He saw Aunt Mary coming and he ducked back in the alley. Oh, baby. Yes, baby. Ooh, baby. Having me some fun tonight. Yeah.
Oh, now always wondered about his look because he had a very distinctive look. It seems that he modeled it on this, I think, Mexican artist named Escuelita.
I don't know.
Almost,
Could be.
yeah, with the little pencil thin mustache and the big pompadour and stuff. He was flamboyant beyond anything anyone had seen, I think.
And getting back to Long Tall Sally, in the biopic, they show Pat Boone trying to record Long Tall Sally, and he does a couple of takes, and then he asks the producer, "Can you slow the tempo down a bit so he can sing it?" And it's quite funny.
You know, sometimes you should just leave
Yes.
a song alone because, yeah,
And actually, Elvis Presley did it the way he did it. And Elvis Presley, as I said, all these guys respected Elvis. They said, now that's any interview I've seen with all these old rock and rollers, when someone asks them about Elvis, it's always nothing but compliments about him.
yeah.
And-
Well, I think he
Yeah.
at his heart, he was a musician,
yes.
really. You know, not although he ended up being a great entertainer as well. Little Richard.
Little Richard went into this phase where, again, he took to religion and just started singing gospel. And they talk about that too, that he was doing gospel and people were getting upset, the record companies, all because they were not selling. He was just doing pure gospel music. And his manager, they were all trying to tell him to, he has to go back to secular stuff too, but he was not wanting to do it. And eventually, when he did it, he went, he was invited on a British tour with Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke and he went by to do a tour
That's a
together.
great combo.
But he was doing, so they had Sam Cooke, and Sam Cooke didn't realize he was not going to do
Secular stuff?
secular stuff because he thought he'd do. So he comes in slowly after Sam Cooke finishes his concert, which is, of course, a great show. And then Little Richard starts, he comes in this very modest attire and starts singing a gospel tune. And then suddenly he takes off all his attire, is back in his old way, and then there's one of his rock and roll things. All and they show that Sam Cooke's face goes from that because he didn't expect him, that he just took over the show after that.
Yeah. He was, his nickname, according to the interwebs, was the architect of rock and roll.
Yes,
Little Richard.
he was. He
Yeah.
changed the whole way it was, it was presented in a way. That was this whole thing, that flamboyance of rock and roll was Little Richard.
I have a story. When the Manhattan Transfer met Little Richard, it's kind of kooky. We were on, believe it or not, we were asked to go on Family Feud.
Him.
Well, it was for charity, and they wanted to have the Musical Misters versus the Swingin' Sisters. And each group would pick a charity, and if you won, your charity would get the money, the $10,000 or something. So the Musical Sisters were Cheryl, me, Gladys Knight, I think, and Dionne Warwick, and I'm missing Williams. She had a big hit with Save the Best for Last. She was also a Miss America, and
Well, I know who you're
you
talking
know who I'm
about.
talking about.
Yeah.
All right, she was great,
Yes.
and I love the record she does
Mhm.
actually. Anyway, it was us against Tim Allen, Bobby McFerrin, Luther Vandross, and Little Richard. Okay, of course the women won, but at one point, one of the questions was, a survey wants to know what is something you might hide from your parents. So everybody's saying, like, cigarettes, dirty magazines. And Little Richard, under his breath, says, "Your wig." And we all cracked him completely. Oh my God. Vanessa Williams. I'm
Vanessa,
sorry.
yeah.
Sorry, Vanessa. Vanessa Williams. Right. Really, really a great time. And you can find that, by the way, on YouTube if you want to see Little Richard on Family Feud.
Yes. You should also see, if not seen it, Little Richard inducting Otis Redding into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's one of the greatest speeches I've ever heard someone give
Wow.
as an induction. And he's singing his songs. He's speaking to. You could make out it's almost impromptu. I don't think he's prepared a speech. He's just giving that.
Yeah, he was quite a character. From there, now this is interesting. This next tune, now is said to be the first rock and roll tune.
Some people say.
Some people say.
it is.
Some people say. We're not saying it's true.
Yes, yeah. Some of the people say that this is the first real rock and roll tune. It was in 1951. It was Ike Turner before Tina came in and everything.
Right.
Ike Turner and his Rhythm Kings, and they did this song called Rocket 88, and which people felt was the real rock and roll
Beginning
song.
of rock and roll. Yeah.
Many people feel that, but it's debatable, so.
Okay, well, let's hear it.
You women have heard of jalopies, you've heard the noise they make, but let me introduce my new Rocket 88. Yes, it's straight, just one way. Everybody likes my Rocket 88. Baby, we'll ride in style, moving all along.
Okay, I'll vote for that.
Yeah, it was in 51, and that's around the time when even Alan Freed started using that whatever rock and roll program he had, right? Moondog or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That's right.
A rock and roll program.
I wonder how much after Rocket 88 he met Tina Turner.
See, I don't know. He was big. Actually, he has become big, and then he came to, I believe, Tina Turner's town or something, and he was asking people to come up and sing with him. And so some friend, Tina Turner was supposed to have been very shy and from a conservative family, and she didn't want, but her friends insist, but she went. And once she started singing, everyone went crazy, and then he said that he'd like her to join his band.
Yeah, that was a smart move.
Yeah.
Yeah, she sure didn't seem like she was from a conservative family.
But she was in the movie. If you see What's Love Got to Do with It,
Yes.
they show that part of it in her.
And then there were people like Big Joe Turner, who I love, and was part of the Atlantic family. I think that's really where I first got into him, because Atlantic, of course, would re-release all of these incredible, groundbreaking R&B artists that they had on their label. Big Joe Turner. Did he sing? He sang with the Basie Band?
He sang with a lot of different people.
But his recording of Shake, Rattle, and Roll.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
that's
rock
the
and roll,
original.
baby.
That is the original, which again
Yeah.
became more famous because of Bill Haley and the Comets. But
Right. But it was
originally
Big Joe Turner.
Big Joe
Yeah.
Turner. Yeah.
Blues Shouter. Let's hear him.
I believe to my soul you a devil when I know. Well, all our work pays the faster my money goes. I did shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. Shake, rattle, and roll. You won't do right, I don't know. Shake, rattle, and roll.
So swinging.
Yeah.
And another great, like, mellow, beautiful, warm voice. Really, really. Now can we talk about Wynonie Harris?
Yes, you can. You can talk about it.
I just love him. I mean, I picked the tune that I love. Maybe it's not his most famous one, because I think his most famous would be Good Rockin' Tonight.
Good Rockin' Tonight, yes.
Yeah, but this one, I was floored when I heard this. possibly through Tim Hauser, or maybe back when I was doing a radio show in LA on KCRW with Tom
Mhm.
Schnabel, Winoni Harris, another blues shouter, and considered by many to be a founding father of rock and roll. But again, he was part of this jump blues movement. Handsome guy, but he wants to build a loving machine.
Yes, it's real gone. Can't do my loving, you know what I mean. Feel so bad, I built a loving machine. After my house, I'll show you what I mean. Well, I just got wise and built me a loving machine.
Wow. I mean, so sweet. And again, you can really hear the musical structures that are becoming
Being
prevalent.
rock and roll, basically. Yeah, the
Yeah.
whole that rolling.
Yeah, boogie woogie. Down, 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 down. Every kid, every teenager was learning that, right?
At that time, especially. Yes.
And speaking of boogie piano masters, we get to Amos Milburn after this, who wrote a lot about partying and booze,
Mhm.
and that was a thing.
Correct. It was in those days. That's people were having fun.
Yes, they were. So it was a much more innocent place, although without its challenges, certainly. But he was from LA, I believe.
I think so.
Yeah, and associated with that Central Avenue crowd, music scene in LA. Fats Domino was a disciple of his. So this is good that we're playing them together. Amos Milburn, we picked one scotch, one bourbon, one beer.
Beer, yes.
Yeah. I think the Blues Brothers actually probably did this too.
But also the biggest hit in the 60s, 70s, like at that time, was with George Thorogood and the Destroyers. He made it a big hit for them.
See, this is why you get the big bucks,
Yeah.
Yosef, because you know this stuff.
Yeah, he did. And in fact, I was at a concert of theirs, and like it was crazy because as soon as he started singing, the whole audience was up and they were singing every lyric with him. It was, and you realize that that's his.
I think I wouldn't feel very good after a scotch, a bourbon, and a beer.
Yeah.
I don't know, but let's hear what Amos Milburn has to say about it.
One scotch, one bourbon, one beer. One scotch, one bourbon, one beer. Please, Mr. Bartender, listen here. I ain't here for trouble and have no fear. One scotch, one bourbon, one beer.
I know. It's hard to turn this stuff up. In this same mold you have, we're not going to play any of this music, but Bull Moose Jackson, who did a lot of raunchy
lyrics, the beginning of the raunchy lyrics.
Yeah, I have a whole collection of these lyrics, these double entendre songs, but my favorite is Big 10-inch.
And we will have the whole song on our list for you to listen
Big
to.
10-inch, in parentheses, Record of the Blues.
Yes.
It's just, and another great one is I Want a Bow-Legged Woman. Yeah, it's great. He was a saxophone player as well.
Yeah.
Right. But and Charles Brown, there was Charles Brown, who we're also not gonna play, but was very, very important in this pre-rock and roll era.
At this point, I think we should end today's show.
Okay, if you insist.
Yeah, we're going to end with T-Bone Walker, but I just want you to know that it would be great if you could go on our website, musictheunifyingforce.com, so that you can at least, listen to all our, not only would you listen to all the episodes, you can comment on them. If there's any suggestions you have, we're always open to listen to suggestions. And you will also get the whole Unify list of songs to listen to, which which some of which were not played at all, but you would be able to hear the full songs, and we talk about them. We'll keep talking about those great songs, which basically unify the world. That's what we're doing here as well. As you saw, the difference between musicians like Little Richard and Elvis Presley, and how they cared for each other. And we're going to go on with the next part of music, the unifying force, and rock and roll, where we go with all the people who were influenced by the pre-rock and roll era, and as it goes on, and then goes later on to the British invasion, which will be much later. But
Now
it's
that's era, definitely. But rock and roll changed the world. Rock
changed
and
the
roll
world, it
changed the world.
in the way people, it got people to, in a way, it really got kids to,
Yes.
it got the kids to not worry about creed or race or anything. That really got them
It
together.
brought together the
Brought the
races.
Yes, the races. That's one type of music that really brought race together and
And that's
sort of
why,
ended segregation in many ways.
and that's why it was discouraged by the church and schools and
Yeah, and
yeah.
the politicians.
And the politicians.
Yes, mainly the politicians.
we're making a generation of delinquents. Yeah, juvenile delinquents. And then Frankie Lyman said, I'm not a juvenile delinquent. But Frankie Lyman will, I hope, well, you see, we'll have to have a special separate show about doo-wop.
We do.
Because that's an important
about-
style,
Yes.
of course.
Again, that's one type of music that unified so many different cultures. So once again, this is Music, the Unifying Force. I am Yusuf Gandhi,
I am Janice Siegel.
and see you soon. And here's T-Bone Walker.
Call it stormy Monday, Tuesday just night. Wednesday's worse, Thursday's also sad.